Call meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Steingraber?
Here.
Hanker?
Yep.
Meek?
Yep.
Keo?
Yep.
Meyer?
Here. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
This is a public comment period of the agenda. Any correspondence or anything with the chair? Anybody from the public trying to say? Okay, hearing none. Approval of minutes of the February 9th, 2022 regular meeting.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes of the February 28th, 2022 special meeting.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have an introduction of new officer to the department. Chief for
Good morning. It's my pleasure. I'd like to introduce Matt Klug to the Marshfield Police Department in the city of Marshfield. He comes to us from Plymouth, Wisconsin. Just so you know, he would be the individual with the full head of hair. He graduated from Plymouth High School in 2018, after which he attended Concordia University, where he met his fiance. After graduating from the university there, he moved to Marshfield with his fiance and began working as a part-time Wood County Sheriff's deputy. So we were lucky to get him from Wood County before they got him. He attended Law Enforcement Academy at Mid-State Technical College in Rapids and graduated December of 2021, did quite well, graduating with a GPA 3rd in his class. Outside of work, Matt enjoys some typical Wisconsin activities such as hunting, fishing, and not so typical soccer, which he hopes to coach in the future someday. So with that, please help me welcome Matt Klug to the department and City of Marshfield.
care to add anything, Matt?
Yeah, I'm just really excited to be here. Like he said, my fiance Brooks is from Marshfield, so when we made the decision that I would move up here versus her down by me, obviously looking for something close, so it doesn't get much closer in the 4-minute drive to work. So that's pretty cool. No, but Marshfield's it's a great size, great department, a lot of resources. It's big enough that you're never bored, but small enough that I can know everybody that I work with. And I'm just really excited to start, and I look forward to finishing my career here too. So,
Welcome to the department. Your partner, Mr. Mitchell.
Boy, it is an either or, isn't it?
yeah.
Easy to pick out anyhow, you described it, so, well. Okay, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you. Stay safe. Fire service and law enforcement news update. Mr. Tinker.
We have got a bunch today. First one, which should be in your packet. This occurred in the state of Alabama. There was a crash between a squad car and a vehicle at the intersection. As this thing was sorted out, it was an unauthorized pursuit, and the department was stuck with a $3.2 million verdict against them. It was estimated that the squad car went through the intersection between 70 and 80 miles an hour, which comes out to be 103 feet per second, which doesn't give you a whole lot of time to do it. And associated with that, this was not in, I don't believe this one was in your packet. This is Florida Highway Patrol. And you see the picture. This is why we have pullover full of wave flows. Florida State Trooper was sideswiped by an inattentive driver while in a traffic stop. The squad car was totaled, and I think the stop was pretty much totaled as well. Trooper was out of the car and was uninjured. Now, and there's two more crashes that are relevant here. This is one which occurred in Oakland, California on the 27th of February. Chief Letty, Chief Bakos, and I got to see the traffic cam footage on this. There were two Oakland, California fire department vehicles responding to an alarm. They were both operating with red lights and siren, and that was verified by witnesses. When the engine crossed the intersection, basically when the rear of the engine was at the crosswalk by the building, there was a vehicle stopped at a red light. The engine goes by, the guy in the car proceeds through the intersection against the red light. At the same time, there's a tractor-drawn aerial truck going the same direction as the engine, and you see the circles. The tractor-drawn aerial had to avoid that car, which at that time, from the traffic video, we estimate was going between 10 to 15 miles an hour. The TDA had to avoid the car, and he wound up hitting the side of a combined commercial and residential building, ruptured a gas main, ruptured water main, and displaced 20 residents in the building. I tried to do an estimate on the speed of the aerial truck. Being very conservative, he went through the intersection at 27 to 33 miles per hour. He tried to divide the time down into tenths of a second. It's possible that he was going between 32 and 41 miles an hour when he crossed the intersection. And if he was going at 27 miles an hour, he's covering 40 feet per second. At the upper end, at 41, he would have gone 60 feet per second. Within the same time, the Detroit Fire Department had an engine which was involved in a crash with a pickup truck, again responding red lights and siren, and both vehicles were totaled. And if you're looking at the price of current apparatus, it's a tractor-drawn aerial, about $2.5 million.
Probably north of that even.
And with an engine, we'll be looking at close to $1 million.
800,000 probably.
Yeah. So a lot of cost involved there. Moving on to some more mundane things. I had mentioned electric vehicles past couple meetings. Spokane, Washington, PD was field testing a Tesla Y. I have no idea what particular model that is, but they took that off their list of candidates for new squad cars. There was insufficient space on the inside, and if you took all the radio equipment, the onboard computer, and the officer, they wouldn't all fit. And in addition, there was no ability to install a security screen behind the front seats. Then, moving on to fire service line of duty deaths. Right now, COVID obviously is the most. On the latest list, we have 3 cardiacs, 4 unknown on duty. People found dead in their bunks or collapsed at the station. Those usually wind up getting cardiac or strokes. You'll notice on this list, there were 2 deaths in Mayday situations, 1 in a wildfire, and then, as we've seen in the past, traffic incidents are right up there with the cardiacs. And then the last one, simply a fire truck fun fact. I think we all know the Q sirens on the front of the apparatus, the big chrome ones. For what it's worth, it's 123 decibels at 10 feet, which is a lot of sound. And it is one of the few sounds that is actually covered by a registered trademark. One of the others is the NGM Lion. And beyond that, there's probably only 3 or 4 more. I don't know whether it's a trademark on the sound or not.
It was at one time.
Okay. Or too many. And oh, by the way, the reason they got the trademark is that their competitors were saying our sirens, quote, sound like a cue. So they got the trademark. I think it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Moving to the approval of the police department bills. Chief.
Okay, you have 3 sets of bills in front of you. 2 were signed by Commissioner Myers on the 8th of February, and the other also signed by Commissioner Myers on the 23rd of February. Going through them, nothing stood out as overly noteworthy, but I would be happy to answer any questions and would look for your approval.
I'll entertain a motion to approve police department bills.
So moved.
Second. Is there any questions?
Just a quick one out of curiosity. On 8H, there's a bill for 1212, but what struck me, it says meal reimbursement autopsy in Madison.
Yeah, the subject of the autopsy would not have, I won't even go there. That would have been the officer who attended the autopsy, would have been to Madison and submitted a reimbursement for.
Yeah. Do officers attend autopsies?
Yeah, a detective typically does.
Really? And for what purpose is that?
If there's anything that we're trying to rule out, or if the coroner and the detective deem something suspicious about the death, then the detective will go with.
Okay. I've never seen that before. I don't remember seeing it before, so I was curious about it. Thank you.
And a related question, Pat. This is on page 8H. Present somebody to the Death Investigation Academy in Appleton. I'm just curious, how many death investigations do we do in a year?
Oh boy, I don't know that I would be able to give you a firm number on that. Really, the way that we look at it is anytime we go to a sudden death, and we don't even really call them sudden deaths anymore because we don't know what caused it, we consider that a death investigation.
Okay.
What you're looking at here is a school that would be more for a detective who we would call in if there's something, again, similar to where we would ask for an autopsy. If something seems suspicious that we would want to look into further, that would be a training that a detective would attend.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question about the long distance charges on there. It's interesting that in all these bills, there's multiple separate phone provider things. On 8O, the long distance charge is just separate. What's that? Like, why is that separate?
The city of Marshfield uses Telnet for the long distance services for phone. It's much cheaper.
Okay.
And yeah, we've been using that system or that long distance carrier for many, many years.
Okay, it was just interesting to see that there's multiple phone providers, multiple across the whole department. So I was just curious. So.
Any questions or comments? We have a motion to approve. Roll call.
Steingraber?
Yes.
Pinker?
Yes.
H.
Yes.
Keel?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes. Thank you, Chief. Approval of fire department bills. Chief.
Hey, good morning. We have 2 sets of bills, one signed by Commissioner Keel on February 9th, one signed by Commissioner Myers on February 23rd. Just a couple of things to note on page 9M and 910. You'll see bills in the amount of $1,520 and $1,625 respectively for RIT equipment. Just to call out what RIT is, so that's our rapid intervention team. Our equipment was getting quite old. Jason Schad, who's the lead lieutenant for the fire department, took a lot of time to research and gather up his equipment and put these packs together. So I just want to recognize him for that project. It was time for those bags to be replaced and get some masks in there. So on page 9P, as in Paul, you'll see a bill in the amount of $7,835 for a sign at the training center. This money came out of Mid-State's portion of the training center revamp, if you will. they purchased that sign, put it up. Our old sign was small, it was getting old. And it's a symbol of our renewed partnership with Mid-State Tech to get our training center up to push. So that was put up recently. And then also, I just want to point out that last month, I reported that we were over budget by about $5,000 fire protection and fire prevention. After talking with finance in between last meeting and this meeting, the sheet with the really small numbers on it that are really difficult to read. Finance sent this over. There were, any classes myself, $143,000 change that were miscoded into fire protection that shouldn't have been, which is what put that budget over. So in the end, after looking at all these numbers, that was supposed to be an EMS. EMS was way under budget. After all these ledger or journal entries were made, we ended up under budget across the board. So I'm happy to report that last month was no fun coming to you and telling you we're over budget on the factory. So I kind of figured this was going to happen, but until I had the evidence in my hand, I guess I didn't want to leave that assumption.
Good.
Good job.
Yeah, other than that, I didn't really see anything out of the ordinary. I'd be happy to answer any questions and ask for approval.
On the,
Can I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Have any questions?
yeah, the hoods for the, on 9M, is that just service like they died up in the kitchen, or what's the scoop there?
Yes, yeah, our fan wasn't working anymore, so that just needed to be replaced.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just a minor one. You got a number on a 9F or beginning on 9E. There are 6 or 7 tax charges on the $20 range. Were you faxing the Bible or what?
That's
It's just our normal charge.
normal charge.
Right, back services, yeah. But there were several months, because we weren't getting the bills from finance for some reason. I caught it, and so then they sent it to us all at once.
Okay. I thought they seemed high, so I wondered.
There's so many of them.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Roll call, please. To approve.
Steinberger,
Yes.
Painter, Meek,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
Meyer.
Yes. Police Department activities, training records, and correspondence, Chief.
All right, things started to get a little busier for us as far as trainings, meetings, things such as that nature. There is one item of note I'd like to point out on 10B. We held our second annual awards banquet at the Community Center on February 25th. This event has replaced the presentation of awards at the annual Police Memorial Ceremony as a standalone event. Was deemed more appropriate for the presentation of department awards. I don't know if this was covered 2 years ago by the former chief, but with the amount of the awards and what we wanted to put into it, we really wanted to do something standalone. So the first time that was done was in 2020 at the Marshfield Clinic Auditorium. So with the success of that event, the decision was made to use this format moving forward. In 2021, we weren't able to do this. We did have several smaller ceremonies at the police department due to COVID, rather than one large get-together. With the success of the event, I'm going to look to change the policy to state that this event as moving away from the police department Memorial Day. And I would expect that the commission will be invited to that event moving forward. The committee wasn't aware if that was done in the past, so I think that was overlooked and caught at the last minute. So I would fully expect that that would be an invitation you would see next year. So other than that, I would be happy to answer any questions and would look for these to be placed on file.
I've got questions on 3 items. First, Lori, chicken ordinance. What's going on?
We've been working with City Hall. Last month we did have a meeting, ordinance and Deb Hall and all the other department heads. The what I'm trying to come up with. The ordinance, it's in the works of being rewritten. We've been taking pieces from like Rapids, from Wausau, and putting them together. So the council should be getting a look at that fairly soon. I don't know if it'll happen this month or next month, but with all the changeover happening at City Hall, it kind of got put back on the back burner. So it's in the process. From our standpoint, we really are not looking forward to having an ordinance for chickens. We have some items for backing up that information, and then I'm sure that'll be presented at the council meeting. So the latest one is the avian flu that's starting to kill chickens in the area.
I'll be at the conference room,
So-
police fire commissioner meeting going on, conference room meeting.
Okay, then, on the 14th and then on the 23rd, 24th, we had a child death review meeting, and then we had investigations of suspected child maltreatment training. On the 14th, was that an after-action review, or was that like a policy review?
That's actually a meeting that's held monthly on a county level with all the departments, and representatives from the different departments attend, and they go over the child deaths for how those were handled, investigated, and move forward with some of them.
Okay. And then investigations of suspected child maltreatment training.
Yeah, that would have been a treatment that's just a training that Officer Klein attended that was online. Because for the majority of these, the first responding officer is investigating that. And then the determination is made whether to move that on to the detective bureau or not. So that'd be really relevant for patrol to attend that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Just a quick one. The edible avian ordinance, should that come here first?
I don't think so, because it's gonna be falling under the ordinance enforcement and City Hall enforcement. It's a dual function for issuing of the license, the permit, the inspection ahead of time by planning and zoning to make sure any dovecote or building is gonna be in the proper area. And because it falls under gonna be ordinance, it's not, ordinance has their own budget. Yes, they are supported by the police department, but they don't really, I feel, and that's been a conversation we just recently been having, that I have always been told that ordinance does not fall under the Police and Fire Commission. That the ordinance department, for whatever reason, way back when, it came to be held at the police department and treated like a police department, but they had their own union, so it was separate from the law enforcement union. And because of the ordinances that they enforce, they kind of fell more under public works. So. But that could be wrong. You know, this is what I was told, you know, many, many years ago by my predecessor.
Mike, I know you and I have talked about that too, as far as structurally where that fits, so might be something to look at moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's a good question, because it comes up every cycle, basically, the personality change. You heard it here first today. No. So. Any other questions or comments? We'll receive those and place them on file. Thank you, Chief. You have a presentation or an announcement to make? Yeah, in regards to a promotion.
Yes. With the recent promotion of Kevin Hamill to the position of lieutenant, we now have another vacancy in the Detective Bureau. I'd like to recommend Officer Rockley Gross for promotion to the position of detective. Rockley brings over 16 years of experience to the position, having started in December of 2005. He's previously served as a school resource officer, so he has some historical perspective on the job itself. He performed very well in the process, and I believe he'll be a great addition to the Bureau. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions, and we'll look for your approval.
I just make one comment. The last time I was on the commission was when we hired this gentleman, and at that time, the commission was impressed, capital I, exclamation point, with the this young man.
And I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second on that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Pat, he went through the usual process that you go through and selected. Yeah, okay.
Right, he's the last one. We actually had 3 applicants for the position of detective. Was Matt Barris, Julie Lou Martinek, and Rockley. And they all did phenomenal, so that would clear out that list. So for the next promotion, we would probably look to start a new eligibility list.
Good news. We have a motion and second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Take it back. Roll call.
Steingraber?
Yes.
Painter?
Yes.
Fink?
Yes.
Keo?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes. Thank you. Fire department activities, training reports, and correspondence. Chief.
Thank you. Nothing really jumped off the page, I mean, besides the fact you'll see a lot of inspections, trainings, station visits even. So really it's symbolic of us starting to pull out of the pandemic a little bit and starting to get back to normal, which is good to see. We still have our precautions in place as far as wearing a mask at the ambulance and everything else, but it's a welcome sight to see a little bit of normalcy coming back. Let's hope it continues. On pages 12C through 12E, we have statistics in there. Right now, what jumped off the page to me in the statistics category is that we're up a total of 108 calls for the year already, which is about 17% over last year. So we're off to a fast start. And again, the only thing I can think of is that this relates to COVID as more people are getting out and about and doing their normal things. We're seeing more and more calls, car accidents, etc. I'd like to take a deeper dive into that and actually take a look and break it down, because one question was raised and I'd never thought of it. Are we seeing more mental illness calls due to being cooped up because of COVID? And I'd like to take a deeper dive into that and see if some of these are related to that. So maybe for next month, we'll try to look at that and see if the call volume continues to increase. But other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that I ask any places.
Questions?
On 12E, the false alarms, does that increase or decrease false alarm calls? On the fire response calls?
We have,
So 18, I was just curious what the trend was there.
18, yeah, that's pretty high. That's pretty high. I can break that down as well.
Is there any? Oh, Glenn.
Just a quick one on 12F, your pie chart at the bottom. The largest share of that 46% is central fire.
Yes.
What is central fire?
Central fire is Colby Abbey area, so we do quite a few intercepts with that.
Oh, okay, fine, thank you.
Steve, you had some questions?
Oh, no, I was just wondering for the false alarm things back to that, is there like any public, service announcement type thing we can do to educate that, hey, if this isn't really a fire call, I'm sure this is a problem for you guys too. Is an emergency, don't call 911, I mean,
So a lot of our false alarms actually come from larger facilities where they have, might have a fluctuation in water flow, and it automatically triggers that. So the majority of our false alarms will get paged out emergent. We'll start rolling, and many times we'll get a call from dispatch, hey, whoever it is called back, it is a false alarm, so we'll just end up sending one unit not emergent. So we're not bringing the whole parade through the city emergent. That's not our goal, so. Yeah.
That's something we regularly just keep an eye on. There was a time where it was higher than that, and it was like it was being abused, but for the most part, I think you have a pretty good explanation for it. Lori?
And it's been many, many years, I want to say maybe even prior to 2008, we had a policy at the department where we start billing for alarms in a year, and it's a rotating alarm calendar, so it's not per year. And then they are billed out at $65 an hour for the false alarms. So it's been going down, the numbers, like some months I might only have 2 or 3 bills I send out. New businesses usually get a courtesy, hey, here's our policy, please start watching your alarms before we start maybe going after them. So we can certainly give you the number. I think it's actually in our annual report, the number of false alarms per year.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we'll place those on file. Thank you. Review and approval of the police department capital improvement plan. Overview. And
All right, we did submit the initial requests for CIP to the committee, so as of right now, no decisions have been made as far as what's going to be taken or anything like that. So most of these, or some of these, are fairly consistent from year to year. One item of note on this is that the vehicles on the ordinance, we really looked at, and that's another reason why it's nice to have Lori here, we really looked at the ordinance vehicle and the type of vehicle we were using with this cargo van. So we were approved in 2022 to purchase a new ordinance truck, which we'd still like to do. However, what we did put in the 2023 capital improvement plan was a fabricated box that would make this vehicle a true ordinance vehicle. So you could actually have animals on the outside instead of cobbling together a cargo van that's noisy, doesn't work, they don't like it. So we really would like to move in that direction. Let's see, what else do we have here? On the detective vehicles, the vehicles are fairly consistent from year to year. What we did last year, we were budgeting for a detective vehicle every year because we were turning over the drug detective vehicles every year for between the 2 drug officers. What you'll see is 2023 and 2024, you'll see 2 purchases and then it goes to every other year. That's basically to keep consistent and get that on an every 2-year rotation. It wasn't deemed necessary to buy a detective vehicle every year. Let's see, where else are we at here? We do have a couple of items that we've really requested the last couple of years that have been pushed back. One is the police department roof replacement for $58,000. The second is the police department digital controls, and I apologize, I did not have the totals on there for you. This would be done over 2 years to the tune of roughly $47,895 to $85,270 the next year. So budgeting in some inflation, there would be about $150,000. With the talk of a new building and the study done on that, the committee has decided to kind of move these down until there was some clarity on that. So none of these are emergent. Interestingly enough, there's a committee that there are some ARPA funds that are available through COVID. That came up at council last night, and the question was asked why we didn't request these items under that ARPA money. My response to that was because I still believe there needs to be some more clarity as far as the investment in that building, as far as where a new building or a remodel might go. So that would be something that I would anticipate this commission and whoever my successor is will probably roll their sleeves up and get to work on. Other than that, everything else is fairly consistent, so I would be happy to answer any questions. And obviously, if there are changes you would like to see made or additions or something, we would entertain that because, again, we haven't made any final cut downs. One thing that I will bring up is within the last week, I did receive an email from our contact at B&H where we purchase our squads, and they did cancel all the 2022 Durango Pursuit all-wheel drive Hemi orders. So what that means for us is we had ordered 2 of those. The F-150 is still scheduled to be here. So in his opinion, we would just have to move to 2023s this fall. We should still be able to get them, but he definitively can't tell me that. So I'm just waiting to hear from him to see if there are some other options we might look at so we can get the squads this year as opposed to waiting. It may mean exploring to see if they have Explorers available or something like that, but I'm just waiting for a little more information on that. So hopefully it won't be too big of a rift. He said he doesn't know if there'll be much of a cost increase. He doesn't anticipate one, but again, until we have those numbers, it's difficult to say.
Quick question. For detective vehicles, do you buy new vehicles?
We have been, yes. And then what happens with those is the drug detective will use those for 2 years, and then we'll rotate them out, and then they'll go into the regular detective fleet. So we'll hold on to those cars anywhere from 8 to 9 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
For the, this renovation project from the police department, was there some kind of emergency occurred on, or what's that referencing?
A couple years ago, we did have Mower Roofing come in and take a look at the roof for we have a membrane roof on the police department, and that membrane roof has a 15-year to 20-year life cycle, and we're way past that. So when the CIP decided to withdraw that project, if you call it, from their 5-year, because of the possibility of a renovation of the building that was going to get thrown into that renovation costs. But it's been how many years now since we had that, and nothing's been happening. I don't foresee a renovation happening in the next couple of years, so that's why I have gone and put it back in for the roof. Because if we fail and have water coming in and hitting our electronic controls or our records, things like that, we have some critical items in the department we don't want to be flooded out, so.
Okay.
And the digital controls, again, that's to help bring our costs down the road. And Jeff Moulter, the facilities manager, has the training already. All the other buildings in under the city have the digital controls, so he's able to look at it and be able to foresee issues happening possibly with an air handler. And then we can do some preemptive mechanical repair versus, and the police department equipment, our building, was built in '83. We are to the point where, is it more cost effective to build brand new versus renovating?
Right.
We are real close to that. It's no longer feasible to renovate.
And that's why those ARPA funds might be interesting moving forward, and why we didn't submit, because I really think there needs to be some involvement from this body as far as what type of a timeline they're looking at and the amount of money that they want to stick into the current building.
I had a question. The old Baltus building, has we had any inspections of that building for maintenance and stuff like that that could come forward maybe on next year's CIP?
As far as what that building needs?
Yeah.
It's functional. They've repaired what needs to be repaired in it, and I don't believe that that's anything that they want to invest in, because I don't think that that's a long-term type of solution.
Okay.
So,
That's part of that Second Street corridor program that they're looking at.
although it really is spoiling us, because having all those vehicles over there is amazing. I'm gonna put that plug in for the next renovation or building. That has been truly amazing for us. So,
Why does it make such a difference?
it makes a difference because we had our entire detective fleet parked on the south side of the building. We also needed a place for the MRAP, which and our ambulance, our special response team command post. So those were two big items to get in there. By having that detective fleet in there and our ordnance cars, they're able to walk right across the street, start them up and go regardless of the weather. It just saves time, fuel, effort, energy, even the little things like moving the cars to plow the lot, and a level of security with them. So it's been really nice.
Good. Do they use the pit for the oil changes for like inspections for vehicles if they need?
We haven't gotten into that. That's pretty rough, but we're not, we as a department aren't doing any types of inspections or anything. So any type of a repair that would go right to who we contract with.
Okay, I was thinking more like for like if you had a vehicle for an incident or something like that, where you had evidence to collect underneath it or something stupid.
I mean, it would be an option if we needed to get under there. We just, to my knowledge, haven't had to use it yet for that, but.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? I'll entertain, I should have done this before, but I entertain a motion to approve the police department 2023, 2027 capital improvement plan.
So moved.
Motion second. Steve. Any questions or comments on that? Then we need a roll call.
Steingraber?
Yes.
Pinker?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes.
Keel? Myers?
Yes. Thanks, Pat. Review or approval of fire department 2023-2027 capital improvement plan overview. Yeah.
On page 14, pages 14E and 14B, actually, you'll find the memo. I'll just provide a quick summary and let you guys answer questions or ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Overall, we're requesting $3,784,500 over the 5-year plan. For the fire side, we are requesting $2.7 million. Of that cost, about 85% is apparatus replacement costs. In 2026, our Quint, which is a 2001 Pierce, it will be due for replacement. It's getting old. We've had to do several major repairs of that piece of apparatus already, and I don't foresee that maintenance cost going down anytime soon. Also in there, you'll see replacement of our squad, which is our hazardous materials, confined space vehicle. That actually has a little mileage on it. We're kicking it around right now in the operations budget that we could probably make that last a little bit longer due to the little miles and low usage. The only thing is technology has well surpassed that. It's also our command post. Has a light tower on it. It can be used for a variety of different functions. And there's so much more out there right now as far as technology that we could be using it for that it just doesn't have. It's I have to check the year on that, but that's around 2000. I want to say we got that around 2000, so as well. In the EMS side, you'll notice that Steve does a really good job of making sure he has his equipment on a rotating schedule. So you'll see in several years, striker power combo replacement, or a Lucas device replacement, or a cardiac monitor replacement. So what we do is he cycles those through on every so many years. He replaces those, and that's the primary CIP request for him. But you also notice we have the ambulance on replacement as well. We've got 2 ambulances coming up in the next 5 years. They will be due for replacement. And that accounts for, I have a typo in the memo there, about 72% of his CIP requests. So overall, the majority of our CIP requests are obviously apparatus. They're just expensive to replace. I'd also like to point out that, as Pat mentioned, the ARPA funding, we're looking at trying to get our 2023 boiler replacement in the ARPA funding as well. Again, that's in discussions. That was discussed last night. I had a few questions from the council regarding that. Why are we replacing boilers so soon? This is a pretty new building. Further explain that when we built this station, the latest and greatest thing was to purchase these smaller boilers with a smaller footprint, high efficiency. They were the next best thing on the market. Not so much. They don't make them anymore. They don't make parts for them anymore. I was notified when they were cleaning our boilers out in the fall of 2021 that one is down. They're pretty much using it for parts to keep the other 3 up and running right now. So we're putting 2 larger size boilers in the budget that are well-known brand names with that will hopefully last. So we can move forward with that. But I'd be happy to answer any questions and ask for your approval of our CIP.
Questions?
Engine replacement and squad replacement.
Yes.
I realize they're here into a couple of years in the future. How many companies out there, from how many companies do you solicit bids?
Generally, for an engine, I think last time we tried to solicit bids from 5 or 6 different manufacturers, probably more.
Okay.
Thinking back, but due to our specs, some neglect to bid on that. And that's because we we solicit help to get these specs written. So and we solicit those from Pierce Manufacturing. And they try to make those specs as generic as possible, but every company is going to recognize that they might have language in their spec and they're going to say, well, that's Pierce, you guys want Pierce. That's not true. We just solicited help from them to help write the spec, make sure we had everything in there that we needed. And kept brand names and proprietary equipment and things like that out of the spec, but they still recognize that that's done. Therefore, they neglect to put in a bid.
That troubles me.
Yep.
With the amount of money that we're spending here, we should be having a team that's writing the specs that we need, not taking the specs from somebody else. Even if they wind up being somewhat generic.
Sure.
Because once, like you said, once that gets known, we may have some very good, viable companies not bidding. I think we should be looking at an actual spec team and make the point of we're not talking with Pierce until we send a bid request to them. I think that's one of the problems we wound up with the last time.
Yep.
And we don't need that sort of situation to occur again.
Agreed. And we can certainly look at doing that.
Well, sometimes it boils down to, and in that particular case, one of the problems was it boils down to the preference for certain types of things that you're familiar with and have worked with, like doors on the sides and electronics and everything else that you prefer to have.
Correct.
That made a difference because the previous one just didn't handle that and didn't care to handle it and made the exception, and I forget how many exceptions there were, 90 or I don't know.
Yeah, there were a lot of exceptions. A lot of that did boil down to things like roll-up doors. We had experience with a certain brand of roll-up doors that we have on other apparatus, and we're consistently, and still are, replacing sensors. They just burn out. They're just not, we've had bad luck with them. So we wanted a different type of door. Not all companies can get that door. Just things like that. You're exactly right.
And he mentioned problems the other time, the number one and number two bids at that time, the second one should have never been considered because they didn't provide a performance bid bond. So they should have went out, but then we opened up the alternate envelope. There were a lot of exceptions to the rules because they didn't handle a certain product. So it does boil down to a lot of what the department preferences for no matter who makes the specs. I mean, but I can see, fairness too, sometimes it'd probably be more upfront of if you could possibly put them together internally.
We could certainly try. I don't know if you've seen the specs on those, they're quite lengthy, but we could try to make it a little more generic to get more companies in the bidding process and not put so much detail into them maybe. The problem with that is then you're fielding a lot of questions from manufacturers. Well, we do this, is this acceptable, and
or you put three companies together to meet the qualifications or the specifications and end up with the other unit that we have that wasn't even one company, it was three companies.
Yes.
Built the truck. And one didn't know what the other one was doing. Anyhow, more laundry.
We can certainly look at the Commissioner Becker, absolutely.
Because I was thinking, wasn't just to do two separate.
Yes.
And Seagrave was going to be quite a plant also.
I saw that, yes.
So that's good.
Other questions or comments? Good question, Bill.
And just a quick one. You've got $400,000 in here for a training center building.
Yes.
What is that? I don't know how that slipped by me.
Sure. So this is a future project that we're hoping to put together. It's in the CIP right now. We don't have specific plans at this point. This was put in by Scott and Deputy Chief Bacus. So the goal is to get a classroom down there for mid-state, for our people as well, so we can hold classes down there. So we have a classroom, a couple of bays for apparatus. It's a combined effort just to get more facilities down there. Right now, we don't have running water for bathrooms or anything like that. Again, it's just to improve that facility down there, to make it more user-friendly and get more things down there for us to train with, so.
And then is that a split effort between Mid-State and?
Yes, yeah. Yes, so there's 400,000 in here, and I'd have to talk with, actually Steve Barr. I see it was split into 200,000 donations and 200,000 from our budget, and I need to figure that out yet. That was done prior to me being in this position, so that's one of the things I need to look at.
Okay, thanks.
Is the intent with that facility down there to kind of make it more like, what, the International Fire and Fox Valley Tech, I think, have a joint facility or something?
Yeah, probably not to that extent, because I've been there.
I have been there.
It is really
a long time ago.
Yeah, so we'd like to make it similar to that. We're talking about having a small city with houses that could be used for the PD as well. Some racked buildings so we can, practice what it'd be like in a tornado type situation. We're looking at tank cars. All sorts of ideas are on the table. It's just a matter of what we can afford, and I think a slow build towards this is what we're trying to do.
Any questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Second. Motion for second. Any other questions? Good question. Roll call.
Schoniger,
Yes.
Anchor,
Yes.
Neat,
Yes.
Keo,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. Thank you. Police Department Annual Report. Chief.
All right, you have in front of you the 2021 annual report. The first thing that I need to do is thank Cindy Getz. She did just a tremendous amount of work on this and putting it all together and gathering information. Was extremely helpful for me with how busy we are at the police department. So again, I can't thank her enough for her work on this. You'll see the format is consistent within recent years. I think it's a very user-friendly, more enjoyable thing than we had done in years past, and that started several years ago. One thing I would like to point out is that for the year 2021, and I'll probably have Lori talk a little bit about this, we're mandated by the state to switch to a system called incident-based reporting, and what that is a different type of reporting for our crimes. Another thing that I'd like to point out before I turn that part over to Lori and any other questions is you are really starting to see some of the anomalies of 2020 start to come back up, primarily in the name of OWIs and traffic stops. I'm a huge proponent of self-initiated activity. I think the value of that is tremendous for our city. I know Commissioner Meek can attest to that. What it does is it really provides us with deterrence for crime. It provides us with visibility. It provides us with an opportunity to talk to citizens. So I was very happy to see that the 2021 numbers specifically in those two areas are coming up. So with that, I will turn over to Lori and just fill you in a little bit on the incident-based reporting, which might account for that 67% of the total major crimes cleared, just in how they're reported. So.
Yes, IVR, it's for incident-based reporting, is a nationwide program that the FBI and NCIC have put out. It's what the entire nation was being pushed to go to for several years, and the Wisconsin deadline just came into fruition last year. We did have some issues because we were a countywide reporting program. Yes, we report our own, but the system we were using was the UCR program, and so it took quite a bit of prodding, and I think last year's budget we had to pay for a third of the conversion or doing the program updating in CIS to be able to do the IVR reporting along with Rapids PD, Wood County Sheriff, and the other law enforcement agencies in Wood County. So prior to IVR, which is incident-based reporting, so let's say an officer goes to a complaint, and within the complaint, the domestic abuse, there might be strangulation, there might be many different aspects within that incident for different types of crime. There might have been a sexual assault piece of it. So with IVR, every different crime is counted. Whereas before, when we were doing UCR, which is Uniform Crime Reporting, what that did, we had to take the hierarchy of the crimes of each incident, and we had to pick the most serious crime, and that's what we reported. So in essence, Wisconsin was always under-reporting statistics or whatever. So this way, we're having uniformity with the rest of the country in reporting, and this way I think the FBI is able to come up with reports and statistics to be able to drill down a little bit more when it comes to possibly funding. So that's the difference of IVR versus UCR.
So with that, with the amount of information in there, I'd be happy to answer any questions. One thing you might note is that some things are starting to go up as we return to normal. For example, gasoline use as we start transporting more individuals to jail. Cost of gasoline, we don't have much control over that, but things are getting a bit back to normal as far as what the jails are taking. So you may see some of those things on the cost side start to go back to normal as well.
In regards to transports, transport officers and transport patrol, that transport officer thing must be working out pretty well for you.
Yeah.
The cost savings as well.
Yeah, that's been a great program.
Yeah. Sworn officer versus.
Correct. What it allows us to do is historically, the shift commander would make a judgment call. For example, if you had 4 officers and a shift commander working, an individual had to be transported to jail, a lieutenant might make the call and say, okay, I'm going to send this officer to jail, we'll roll with 3 officers. That's really an uncomfortable spot to put us in. So in my mind, cost and everything aside, that's been one of the biggest values, is it keeps police officers in the city. And again, there's a risk assessment that goes with everybody that a transport officer takes. If it's deemed that the individual is not safe to go with a transport officer, then we'll still send that officer, and we may look to bring in some overtime to cover that spot. So
Good to see. Any other comments or questions? Did a marvelous job on it. You can share that with everybody involved.
I definitely will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We received that and placed on file. Statistics aren't bad either. Thanks. Presentation of the 2021 Marshfield Fire and Rescue Department annual report. Chief.
Yeah, thank you. Please present the 2021 annual report. A lot of work goes into this every year, and it's really a team effort amongst a variety of different people in the department. Need to thank Lori Panzer, Chief Owen, put some work into this as well before he retired. Deputy Chief Bacus, Deputy Chief Jonas, Deputy Chief Weiland, Deputy Chief Clemens, Lieutenant Barnes, and several others that contributed in some fashion. So without their work, we wouldn't have gotten all this done. So overall, call volume remained pretty steady with what we saw in 2020. We've had a little bit of a dip since the pandemic began. And like I mentioned before, we're off to a fast start as we pull out of the pandemic here. So I expect call volume numbers to increase to what they were pre-pandemic. It's trending that way anyway. Also, just want to make mention that this year's report is dedicated to our retirees. When I started adding up our 5 retirees' years of service, it was over 130 years of experience that we're losing from this department. And all of those retirees, had over 20 plus years in each. So after you spend 20 years with people, you build that bond, and it's tough to see them go. So just wanted to make sure that was mentioned and was dedicated. In the report, you'll find a whole bunch of statistics, pictures, information about different programs and responsibilities we've had in the fire department. We do reference a report ourselves throughout the year. We'll get calls from other municipalities asking what was your call volume for last year, or other questions. So we do use this quite often, and we always keep it in our offices and at our fingertips. So other than that, like I said, there's just so much in here. As far as statistics, I hope you had a chance to review it, and I'll let you guys answer or ask questions. I'll answer those and ask that we place this on.
That's one comment I have, is I really like the pictures and the breakdown for who's on what shift. That's helpful for us because we can always get in here.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? Wonderful job on the presentation. Information, and then obviously both departments share this with other departments where people are curious about Marshfield, and so it's more than just a yearbook or something like that. It's to sell Marshfield as well. So departments, it's a good practice.
And one comment. Is this incorporated on your webpage or Facebook page? Is kind of like an advertisement?
Yeah, so this will be posted to our website. I don't know if it goes on the city's website or not as well.
I don't believe it has for the last couple of years with the changeover of the format.
I do know this is on our website, though.
Okay.
So
How about Facebook? About Facebook for both departments? Because I think this can be utilized as a recruiting tool, kind of.
Sure.
People like to know about the community that don't live in this area, and I think this is a resource that they wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Right.
I don't really have a good answer for you on the Facebook portion of it, because I don't know where you would put that on there where people would be able to see that on. If you posted it, that's going to get buried, and
Right.
I just don't know enough about that to know if there's a way to link that to somewhere.
I almost think you'd have to provide a link.
Probably a link in maybe the about info or something like that.
It could be, yeah. I'm sure there's a way to do it.
I don't know myself. I just thought it would maybe be just another good idea because a lot of people don't know about the community that might be interested in the learn this way.
We've got a big Facebook following.
The one thing I particularly enjoy is gives the apparatus and the equipment that we have. As in regards to when it was purchased and when it's retired and things like that too. It's good for us to know at least two, we can recognize those things as when we see them on the boat. So, any other comments?
Just a quick one. I think they're both really well done, and the people on the commission are very helpful.
We will receive that and place that on file. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Any items for future meetings? Okay, hearing none. 17. Okay, item number 17, verbal reports from both police and fire departments on how they are viewing the growth of the city, growth of banners. Mr. Franklin requested this at the January meeting. You prepared?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. Chief.
Well, I mean, I can prepare, although this is a bit more of a difficult science, I think, for police, especially when you start talking about response times. Our expectation is that our officers are in the community more than they're not, meaning that they're not in the department. So actually measuring response times is a bit more difficult because it really is dependent on where the officer is at the time that they're going to that location. What I can tell you is that when we assign patrol, we typically break the city into 4 quadrants. We have a northwest, southwest, southeast, and northeast. And those dividers are done using Central Avenue and the train tracks. So what you would do is assign an officer in each of those areas. Any extra officers would be assigned as a patrol or a prowl car, meaning they'll pick up the excess. Now, the thing to remember about that is that when we assign that officer to that area, there is not an expectation that they spend their entire shift in that area. What it means is that they're the first on the list should a call come into that area. Now, for example, one night you might have a very busy southeast where you go right down the line, you have 3 officers handling calls in the southeast. Then the Prowl car would pick that up. Why that's important is because I think as you look to the future, and this sort of came up when we started looking at new police departments, the location, as the city continues to grow north, do we now start to realign, and maybe the tracks aren't the best divider for the north and south sectors. So that might be something the police department could look at. So when you start looking at future coverage, I really think that the department is growing north. One thing that we talked about too is it's been some time since we've done a staffing study. So when you start looking at response issues and times, it appears as though we're staffed adequately for now. Our typical shift is 6 officers and a shift commander. We really strive not to go below 4 in a shift commander. That would account for any type of off time. So a staffing study in the future might be something to look at to make sure that we are within the guidelines of what we consider minimum staffing. Another thing that I really think is important, as we touched on earlier in the CIP, is the police department and the location of that department, because there are often times where officers are there doing reports or whatnot. And so I'm a big believer that the department should be somewhat centrally located, or at least stay in that area to equal out that coverage if you're responding from the department. So, but again, that's something that, could be looked at in the future. One of the things that we do is we have a problem-oriented policing form. So what that is it's a way, I don't know if you're familiar with problem-oriented policing, it's a great science. It goes way back years. It's solving problems rather than simply taking enforcement action. For example, it's as simple as identifying a intersection where you might have a lot of crashes, let's say the intersection by Walmart. So if we determine that there's a lot, or we take a citizen's complaint that there's a lot of speeders on South Beach Avenue, the officers will do what they call a problem-oriented policing form, and all the officers on patrol have access to that. So what it does is it starts to focus our problem areas. So that's one way to also compensate for what might be perceived as response issues or individuals or less coverage in a certain area. So really that's about the most I can provide on this at this point. I think we're doing well with it. I think as the city grows north, I think that staffing study and the police department issue are going to become big. Our calls have really sort of maintained the same number throughout the years, granted a couple thousand here or there. But the thing to remember on those is that those are also measured when you start looking at overall case numbers. Might be 22,000, but every traffic stop has a case number. Every citizen contact, if it results in something, might have a case number. So again, that doesn't necessarily mean 22,000 dispatched calls for service. So I would be happy to answer any questions, but that's my take on where I think that should go and things that might need to be considered in the future.
And I have one thing to add. With COVID, the last couple of years in the jail, not taking inmates, the courts are now starting to order in for fingerprinting and even DNA submissions. So our day shift is starting to see that accumulate, correct, Officer Cook? So we've got court-ordered fingerprints that are starting to happen, and because we are in the north part of Wood County, even though the judge might order them to go to Wood County Jail, the jail was turning people away because of COVID and said, we're too busy, we don't have time. Go to Marshfield. If you live in the Marshfield area, they will, especially if it was a Marshfield case, we would actually be okay with them coming to us so we can actually create their arrest with those fingerprints and start building their criminal history at the state level. But not only that, COVID, we weren't taking anybody even for citizen fingerprinting, and now we're starting to open up and we are seeing more and more civilians coming in for fingerprinting, for teacher licenses, for concealed carry out of state, going overseas, a whole bunch of different reasons that they're coming in. So we are starting to see an increase in needing an officer in the station to do that. So we've been quite busy, and I don't see that letting up for probably for a year.
No, and just an interesting take on that. 20 odd years ago when I started, the concern was to have your primary staffing on nights. For example, you didn't want to understaff on a Friday or Saturday night or even a Thursday night. That's where it seemed to be busier, but now as the years go by, it really seems like day shift is where we are just getting the bulk of work. So that might be something to look at as we move forward too, our staffing level on days versus our staffing level on nights. We've been fairly status quo with a 6P to 6A and a 6A to 6P type of shift. Now we have run in the past something called an early man, or an early officer would come in at 5 to try to pick up some of that evening stuff before so that the end of the day shift wasn't getting hit with it. So maybe some further looking at the scheduling might be of value too.
I got a comment, so please bear with me when I ask this. When and if you do look at a staffing study, is there any way that you can incorporate how long it takes to process somebody through statistics for chapters? Because a lot of times we have 1 or 2 officers at the hospital. That's actually taking them off the street and excluding them from being able to go take calls. So that minimum staffing actually drops considerably when you're talking 2-3 hours or more to add personnel to the department. Whether it's 1 or 2 people per shift, I think it would be worth looking into. Likewise, we did a similar thing by incorporating transport officers who are civilians to retain people on the road that are sworn officers. So
What I can
those 2 things really affect a lot.
They do, and what I can tell you is the state legislator is the Department of Justice is very cognizant of the amount of time taken for medical clearances. And there has been I completed a survey last fall trying to give some estimates on the number of those types of things. I know Wood County is now going to have a meeting over some issues with how long it takes at Aspirus down in Rapids. So that's an ongoing thing. It really puts us we could probably talk about that all day. The challenge with that is that we're in no position to ever overrule what a doctor tells us we can or cannot do. And that seems to be the biggest challenge. So for us to take someone up and get medical clearance, even if they're cleared by the Marshfield Medical Center, if they're not cleared to the level that the Norwood doctor wants them, we sit till they are. So, but in response to that, that could be something to look at, but I'm optimistic that there could be some changes coming on the Department of Justice side, maybe in the legislature, to try to curb some of that.
It just seems to me as though it wasn't a rarity. It's a consistent thing, a common thing, at least a number of times a week. When you'd be working, you'd be up at the hospital, for several hours. So it's not like you're just having somebody infrequently go to the hospital. It's a constant. So I think that should potentially add to personnel needed on the department, or to add to minimum staffing needs.
It definitely could.
2 questions. Lori, does the department do inked fingerprints as well as electronic fingerprints?
If the citizen comes in with their cards, we will do the rolling manually. But we actually prefer doing the live scan machine, the electronic, because as they're being rolled, it tells the officer if it's good print or not. So we would have less rejections, but it all depends upon that person's fingerprint. Sometimes they're really worn down and there might be issues. So I don't know if it's half and half right now.
So I know some out-of-state agencies are very insistent they want inks. Then, you're talking about problem-oriented police, problem-oriented policing. Is that like ComStat?
I guess I need to know what you mean by that.
Like NYPD had their daily statistics accumulation, so this would be somewhat similar to that.
Sure, I think on a probably less sophisticated type of level, yeah. I mean, this is, most of these are generated by citizen complaints.
Okay.
Is where most of these complaints come from. Recently, and I'll take a lot of calls from citizens and we'll generate an email down to Lieutenant, hey, can you put a problem-oriented policing form out? Alex, I think you could probably attest that they're fairly common, and I think it's a fairly effective tool right now to give us some concentrated patrol.
Obviously, NYPD is bigger and they've got all the resources, right? Something happens, it enters their system and it's to the appropriate precinct literally within minutes.
And as I looked at this topic, I thought to myself, in a larger metropolitan area, they do have dedicated cars for response to calls, similar to they have traffic divisions, or they're very specialized. So in a metropolitan area like that, it might be much easier to kind of hammer down what a response time is, because I know when you look at the issues some of these cities have had, all of a sudden 911 response time goes up. It's easier to measure because they have dedicated officers that simply do that. So.
Andy?
I've been struck by your comment that, about staffing study. Do you particularly collect data that would support a staffing study?
Yeah, and again, staffing studies are, what I know of them is it boils down to an assessment of committed and non-committed time, which is what time are you committed or are you called to that you have to do versus what you might measure as free time, where an officer would go and engage in traffic enforcement or go look for warrants or building walkthroughs. So the number that you're really focusing on is that committed time and how much is that taking, and is it taking away from non-committed time? So I'm by no means an expert in that field. I know that they're fairly common. And I think that really goes along with what Commissioner Meek said as far as maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but I think in the future at some point there should be a reassessment, because I know it's been some time. I think this goes back before, I think 2 chiefs ago, when that chief was a lieutenant, was I believe the last time a staffing study was done. So you're probably going back 11 or 12 years.
It would seem to me, just based on anecdotal evidence, that both departments need more people.
Take them.
Yeah. The job has become increasingly complex.
Have 2 men.
You know, my analogy is I went to an institution that had one person that packaged financial programs for students. When I left, there were 4. And it wasn't that, it was just that things got more and more complicated and more detailed and just, so I think your comments and comments that I've heard from Scott and others, I'm going to become a proponent for pretty quick staffing study in both departments. And that's what you need to argue for more people.
Yeah, I think it should be done like on the next, whoever becomes next chief, like pretty much right away.
Well, we need to work that out. But, I think your comment about staffing studies was an important one.
We have everything going to come in.
I think it also boils down to the current personnel being safe in their work environments, coupled with the community as a whole.
Yeah.
It also reduces officer injury for the police side, and I would think the same for the fire department personnel.
Yeah. Well,
Liability issues and everything.
yeah, what I'm saying is that struck me as something maybe we need to get at.
Everybody else is asking questions. Do you see any time in the future in your crystal ball and substation?
Oh, yeah, now you're looking, you know, again, a substation, it's as valuable as if somebody's there and they're not in the community. I mean, Lori makes a good point. Your substation really is your squad car and what those have turned into. So you could put an office on the north side, maybe like Wood County did in Norwood. However, what you're really doing is giving a place for someone to go and complete a report. If not everything's there, for instance, if you're not able to fingerprint up there and things like that, I mean, I don't think we're there.
Okay. It just felt good to ask a question.
Yeah. Keep me guessing.
You pass.
I go
There's no,
right up there with the helicopter.
yeah.
Ultralight.
I didn't ask you about traffic reports.
Traffic helicopters?
Yeah.
Maybe do a traffic drone or drone?
Probably have a few volunteers for that one. Okay, well, thank you for that update and information, and we appreciate it. Peter?
Yeah, from the fire side, similar to Pat, is the city expands north and south. I would agree it's expanding to the north faster than it is south for sure. Our response times increase. So I just pulled up some stats based on what fires do. Fires are doubling in size every 30 seconds right now. Back in the 1970s, a homeowner would have 17 minutes to escape their home. Nowadays, they have flashovers occurring in 4 to 6 minutes. So they average about 5 minutes to get out of your home. So, and that's from the time the fire starts. That's the biggest thing right now. And the thing we're dealing with the most is we don't have as many fires as we used to, but these fires they're growing in size very quickly. They're very dangerous fires. You couple that with modern building construction, lightweight floor joists, lightweight roof construction, we're seeing collapse even quicker too. So by the time we get on scene from those fires, if it's a room and contents fire, that room is already flashed. It's already too late for if anybody was in that room. The hope is that obviously that nobody was in that room by the time we get there. But again, once that fire flashes inside that room, that fire is going to grow exponentially. Fires are a lot more dangerous, they're a lot more volatile, put out a lot more toxic chemicals that we carry around on our turnout gear. They're just a lot more vicious than they used to be. Seconds do matter. I know that's a cliche saying, but they really do matter. They are doubling in size every 30 seconds. So it's very important to us to get to scenes quickly. I pulled some sample response times for structure fires. Fry Court this year, 3401 Fry Court, 7-minute response time. That does not include turnout time. That's from en route to on scene. False alarm at 2001 North Central, 7.5-minute response times for fire. Structure fire at 1000 North Oak, 5.5 minutes. Electrical equipment arcing at 1000 North Oak, 6.5 minutes. To the south, 1000 East Heritage Drive, 5.5 minutes. Another one there, Heritage Drive, 6.5 minutes. 1915 East 29th, 7.5 minutes. And a dumpster fire at Downwood Drive took us 5 minutes. So, and again, these are en route to on-scene times. The expectation is for NFPAs to be there in 4. So we're not meeting those to the extreme north and south. I think east and west we're doing okay. But it's quite obvious we need to get there quicker. The only way I can think of to get there quicker is if, again, not a popular word to use, but second station. I see that second station being on the north end of town. We don't have any city representation on the north end of town right now. It puts us closer to box stores. It puts us closer to the clinic. And the whole premise would be is to get that first engine on scene immediately. They can begin operations and get everything moving quickly, at least a lot more quickly than everybody responding from this one central location. And again, getting there for those box stores, very important to get your FTC hooked up, your fire department connection, get water flowing to that sprinkler so you can boost that system. There's just a lot to do in these fires, whether they have sprinkler system, whether it's a residential fire, a lot of concerns with the lightweight construction and everything going on. So from the fire perspective, as Pat mentioned as well, and Commissioner Meek, staffing. So I looked at station studies while I was compiling this information. And there was one done in 1971, which called for 15 personnel per shift. Now that was back in 1971. We didn't have the call volume we have right now. We didn't even have EMS like we do right now. And again, that called for 15 people per shift. total of 45 plus a chief and assistant chief. Right now, we're sitting at 12. So you can look at that study and, you know, we're obviously not meeting those standards. The standards for initial response for structure fires increased to 14 personnel on scene. Again, we have 12 total, plus vacations you add in there, we have an 8-person minimum. So we're not even coming close to NFPA standards out there. On the EMS side of the house, some stats I put together is permanent brain damage begins at 4 minutes. So if you're not breathing, don't have a heartbeat, blood isn't flowing, permanent brain damage begins at 4 minutes. Brain death occurs at 6 minutes. So you can keep those numbers in mind as I go through the response times here. Average bleed out time is 2 to 5 minutes for severe bleeding, which is why we start the Stop the Bleed program. Try to get people helping themselves before we can get there so that we stop that. Again, seconds matter. Sampling of some EMS response times, and these I was able to average out. And once again, this isn't route on scene. This doesn't count the time it takes for a person that may be up in the kitchen area or on the other side of the station to get to the rig. Usually that we try to get there within 1 to 2 minutes. More on the 1 minute side for EMS, 2 minutes sometimes for fire, because you're responding from the station and you have turnout time as well. So let's see here, I tried to compare similar areas as the fire. So 3401 Fry Court, 7 minute average. 2001 North Peach, 7.5 minutes. 2001 North Central, 7 minute average. 1000 North Oak, 5 minutes. 209 Wilderness View Drive, that's a assisted living center way up on the north end of town, 7.5 minutes. But to the south, 1100 East Heritage, average of 5. 1900s of East 29, 3.5 minutes. 3500s of Downland Drive, 5 minutes. And 30 Corporate Drive down in the industrial park is 5.5 minutes. Once again, I think these numbers show that to the north, our response times are greater than that to the south. Certainly, again, I think these numbers point to a second station to the north. Again, this puts us closer to several nursing homes, box stores, closer to the clinic again. And once again, our call volume's doing nothing but increasing. So on the staffing side, our paramedics they're being run through the meat grinder. To put it, that's probably not the best term, but they are getting tired. They're exhausted. They're running hard. So staffing would help reduce that workload on them as well. Furthermore, infrastructure concerns follow. So as the city expands, we need infrastructure to follow. And by what I mean by that is, especially water mains, in the form of looped water mains. We have several water mains that extend to the north and the south, but they're dead-end water mains. And unfortunately, on some of those mains are large apartment complexes. So when we start thinking about running a fire scene, these large apartment complexes have a sprinkler system in them. If something were to happen to that water main, if it were to collapse, and we're pretty lucky with our utilities, they generally get those repaired very quickly. But if something were to happen and interrupt that water supply and catch a fire, there's no water going to get to that sprinkler system. We're not going to have water to hook into to fight that fire. So that's a major concern for us. When you have a loop system, water can come into that hydrant or that area in 2 different means. So that's what I mean by a loop system, and that's what we would certainly like to see. Right now, some of our areas of concern are the Fry Court Mobile Home Park on the north end of town. So that is a private private park, so there are no hydrants in there. So I did some measuring on our GIS system, and at minimum, this is gonna cause a delay in suppression due to relay pumping. So relay pumping, anything over 1,000-foot lay with LDH, we have to put a hydrant, or an engine at the hydrant and then one at the scene. The reason for this is just due to friction loss through the hose, and we need to boost the pressure from the hydrant to the next engine. So that causes a strain on resources. It causes a strain on personnel at the scene. Less people to fight the fire because we had to station those at the engines. But back to the measurement portion. So from a hydrant to the furthest mobile home in the Fry Court Mobile Home Park is 1,600 feet. So that's obviously going to cause relay pumping. Now, with that being said, there is a parcel northwest of the mobile home park, another apartment building going in. Again, it's going to be on a dead-end hydrant system for now. If any further development happens to the northwest, or I'm sorry, northeast of that main would be looped at that point. At least that's what we discussed in the DRT meeting, so no further development unless that main is. They are adding 2 hydrants on Fry Court, so that's a bonus for the Fry Court apartment. The Fry mobile home park. So we'll actually have 2 hydrants up there a little closer now. So that was kind of a benefit with this apartment complex going in. In addition, into that new apartment complex, they're going to have a detention pond. We do have a dry hydrant going into the detention pond with water we can use to fight a fire in case something does happen to that dead end main. So we're trying to build in contingencies to these. Obviously, the gold standards have looped water main. That's what we want. Other areas of current concern right now are the homes. Let's see here, just west of McMillan, the viaduct actually. So I believe it's Nelson and Marathon. Yeah. So that's still on wells. There is no hydrants there. So looking at operations to try to fight a fire in that area, it's not a good situation. So we're either going to have to lay LDH across all of Veterans Parkway, because that's the only way we can, that's the only hydrant we have is on the east side of Veterans. So you're talking about shutting down a highway now, which nobody likes to do. And that lay for LDH to the furthest house on Marathon was 1,470 feet. So again, you're talking not only shutting down a highway, now you're talking relay pumping. Coming from the south, I believe, I can't remember the measurement. From Ives, it was 1,700 feet.
Right, from Ives to Nelson's about 1,700.
Yeah. So again, a lose-lose situation in that area. Again, just talking about infrastructure, what we need to see happen as the city expands. Another area of concern is apartment complex on North Hume by Walmart. Again, large apartment complex, water main is not looped. Apartment complex on North Hume by the high school, large apartment complex, water main is not looped. Large apartment complex on Heritage Drive, water main is not looped. And then Parkview Terrace, mobile home park, that's been a difficult one for us for a long time. Again, it's a private mobile home park. So the hydrant off at 25th to the furthest mobile home in there is 1,750 feet. We have had to relay pump on that mobile home fire in within my time here. So, and then lastly, I'd just like to mention that as the city expands more, we start sending ambulances and engines further and further out away from the station. And that just spreads our resources out and further and further. So, you know, catch a fire while engine's up on a CO call in the far north end of town. You know, that's less resources we're going to have to pull from the central fire station to get to the fire. Less resources we're going to have on scene. So, just kind of a final thought on that. But those are the concerns I see right now. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
three questions. The Fry area apartment complex, do we know how many units are going in there? Not buildings, but actual livable
I
units?
think it's in the 80s. I want to say there's 80 plus units. I think it's 5 or 6 buildings, and they're 12 to 16 unit structures.
Is there anything in like the city building code or like the plan for the plan commission that can, deal with some of this stuff with the hydrants and things to say, hey, you can't do this until you put this in there?
Yes, it can be stopped. I participate in the DRT, the Development Review Team meeting. So that's where I kind of have my input. I know Commissioner Penker serves on the board, and I've been to a few of those board meetings, and generally these are passed. I will express my concern at the DRT meetings. I have done that in the past if I see an issue. So it doesn't mean, I don't think it means it won't get passed, but we're pretty limited by our code as far as NFPA is concerned, and that's in my purview. It's mainly what I can control is access to the structure and a few other things, but I can't kill a project dead.
It just seems like the city would be holding to think about that, because about the time something happens, it's gonna go bad, it's gonna go really bad.
Yeah.
Well, I'll answer that from the planning commission standpoint. We've had 2 proposed developments, the one on Fry Court, which is going to be built. On that one, there was a delay because we made the gentleman go back and revise his plans. Because of the water situation up there, if you had a water main break, the way that was set up, you would have had to bring in water tenders from North and Spencer. And the time involved there, well, the buildings are gone. It's a proposed development on Lincoln Avenue. There's a rural holding area there. The gentleman wants that to be subdivided. That subdivision was, we don't have the certified surveyor's map, but the concept was approved at the last planning commission meeting. And on that particular one, I brought up the question about water supply, because there your nearest hydrant is at Ives Street. Now what's interesting is those people in that proposed area, they have city sewer, but they don't have city water. So you would have, your water supply would have to come from either the Parkway or from Ives Street, which are both in excess of 1,300 feet. And as Pete mentioned, when you shut down a major highway, that causes some considerable issues.
Well, because then it's these guys' problem, because they have to shut the highway down.
Well, it becomes their problem, it also becomes a state police problem. If you shut down a state highway for any length of time, you gotta call the State Traffic Operations Center, and this gets to be very confusing. I do know 2 chiefs that had the opportunity to shut down transportation routes. One shut down a 4-lane highway, and within a half hour, the command post received a telephone call from Homeland Security wanting to know what was going on and why was this intercity route being closed. And in the other case, I know a chief who had to lay hose across the Canadian National Main Line. And this caused a considerable amount of problem. Train stops, engineer and the conductor get out. If you can't do that, you gotta let us through. No. Train master calls up, says, nope, can't let you through, we gotta pump water. In the end, you got a call from somebody in Montreal, Canada. And he said, we're losing X number of dollars every minute you keep this thing shut down. And the chief said, okay, here's the deal. You gonna pay for the property? Because this was a case where the hydrant was on the other side of the tracks. I said, well, you gotta pay for the building loss. Well, the guys in Canada hung the phone up and they kept pumping water. It does cause a lot of problems. But being on the Plan Commission, I know Pete has been in a number of times. Some of the developers don't like it. But we got a water main.
Right.
but they don't realize there's no backup.
Yeah.
And if you got, like you said, if you got a sprinkled property and you don't have water supply, the sprinklers don't do you any good.
With this way, I'm not the most popular person at developing routine meetings.
Yeah, but it's a responsibility that you have for your department, and it's a body that is addressing it, whether it be the plan commission or the DRT.
And I
Not allow projects if it's gonna be a you're gonna be in a world of hurt if they go ahead with an 80-unit apartment complex and we can't fight a fire. So the line is at the people making the decision to proceed with a project like that regardless. I mean, they've got the control of the whole situation.
And I will say the developer up in the Fry Court area, he came back with an alternate plan, which was that detention pond. I believe it's 85,000 gallons when it's filled.
They got like dry hydrants to get there in the winter, or how?
No, that's going to be dry hydrants.
So the area of Lincoln, Nelson, and Marathon, and you were talking about fire there, having to route a hose across Veterans.
Yes.
Would you be going under the viaduct?
You have to go under the viaduct.
Would you need, I think it's called a pumper on that side to increase pressure over?
Yes, because that Lee is over 1,000 square feet, or 1,000 feet.
It's like 1,300 to Nelson.
Yeah, I think it was 1,300 to Nelson.
Another odd question probably, do all of our fire trucks, the larger rigs, fit underneath that viaduct? Okay, so that's an issue as well.
Yeah, so the truck would have to, no, the truck would have to come down Lincoln to get there.
So you'd have to go all the way around, obviously, you and I know this, and all of us probably do, if that truck has to respond or trade off or whatever, if they were even able to do that.
100% correct.
So then the response time, the averages that you were talking about, I know that's a year-round thing, regardless of road and weather conditions. So it'd be nice to know what the actual average response time is in the winter versus the good driving months, where those time frames are actually a lot higher, I think, in response. And breaking that down to me, I think would help in also maybe getting another station.
Sure, we can certainly pull that data. In fact, all this data, by the way, I pulled from our image trend software, so it wasn't, calling dispatch or anything.
Right.
So I think we should be able to break that down. I tried to pick a random sampling,
Right.
summer months, winter months to put in there, but yeah, I can certainly do that, break it
It
down.
was good, I just know that in the winter months, sometimes it can be extremely difficult to get from one end, as far as time-wise, if you're in a hurry.
Agreed.
Emergent.
Any other questions or comments? I think in regards to the substation, I think the city missed the bullet 15 years ago when they built this building to not have gone along with the idea of this north substation, because at that time we in fact had $450,000 piece of property on the top of the hill on Lincoln, on St. Joe's and McMillan, to be donated to us for the placement of the station. And, but it wasn't deemed necessary to build something on the north end at the time.
Just a question with the stations, looking forward, I know if the police department gets renovated or replaced, would it be worth having some kind of a joint station on the north end? Because it seems like you're talking about the center of the north. I mean, to chuck a couple of ambulances in the engine in one side and then have department operations for the police in the other or something like
I
that?
know that did come up 15 years ago, and one of the concerns you had is that while you guys are trying to sleep, we might mess with you throughout the night, so that would be something. I mean, that's a major temptation.
Well, there was a Facebook post one time that was interesting.
Well, I mean, if you think about it in all seriousness, you'd be buying one lot, so it could be cheaper that way, one building.
I don't know if the layout having sleeping quarters for the FT on one side and a bay of equipment separating the the police department, that way there would be less noise. I don't know if that would be,
Sure, yeah,
I don't know.
we'd have to look at that through us. I'm sure it's been done in other cities and, you know, I'll be looking at other plans and figuring out what would work best. I certainly think it would be doable.
It's a matter of the city biting the bullet and doing it. That's what it's gonna boil down to.
I wouldn't say anything's off the table as far as looking at it.
Pete, I'm extrapolating from the numbers you gave at the beginning of your presentation. My house was built in 1891, so I should have about an hour and 20 minutes.
Wow. Yes. Do you have the original furniture? That's the big part of it.
Pretty close.
Okay, well then you're good. You've got 17 minutes.
Okay,
Or an hour and a half or whatever it is.
Thanks for keeping the information. Could you share that with us electronically? Same information. I appreciate that. Very good discussion. Any items for future agendas?
The kind of discussion we had here at the end is really helpful for the commission.
Okay, in that case, then I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session under Wisconsin State Statutes, Chapter 19.85, or 1.C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the government authority has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Specifically, the commission will discuss selection of a police chief, and specifically, the commission will discuss selection of a fire chief. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Move into closed session.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Steiger? Yes. Baker?
Yes.
Yes.
Keo?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes. After about a 2-minute break,